Hello everyone, it is me, Dan here, back again with another video, and today we're going to be reviewing a movie that I honestly never thought I would ever be reviewing on this channel, let alone getting made, and that is of course the Uncharted movie, which is the film adaptation of the video game franchise of the same name, directed by Ruben Fleischer, who you will probably best know for the two Zombieland movies and the first Venom film. Starring Tom Holland as Nathan Drake and Mark Wahlberg, aka Marky Mark, as Victor Sullivan. This was a movie that I went into with very skeptical ambitions. I'm a huge fan of the Uncharted games. It's easily my favourite game franchise of all time. I love all of those games, especially Uncharted 4. And so I kind of felt glorified in the fact that my favourite video game franchise had not yet had a movie adaptation to potentially butcher it. So that was why for all of these years I was completely against this movie getting made. I was fully aware of all of the development issues that this film has had for like, what, 15 years to get to this point where it's actually being released. The amount of names this has gone through for directing wise, to the story to be written by, to play the lead characters. It's been insane. It's been a crazy journey. But this film has actually been made. I kind of went into this film thinking this is going to be bang average at best. I saw it opening night with my good friend of mine who's also a fan of the games, going in thinking this will probably be just a movie that either tarnishes the franchise or is no better than being bang average. Well, I'm here to eat some big humble pie because I enjoyed this movie, and you know what? It might even be a good movie. So starting off with the positives, Tom Holland as Nathan Drake. I really liked him. Again, eating that humble pie. I was wrong about Tom Holland as Drake. I was completely thinking that this was the wrong casting choice. I just couldn't see it. I couldn't see him as pulling off Nate as well as he does in this film. And I'm completely taken aback by how much I thought he really did a good job at embodying the character. I loved his mannerisms. I loved the back and forth that he had with all of the other characters. It felt like Drake, his kind of reactions to people who antagonize him. It felt like Nathan Drake, and Tom Holland is putting his all into this film. He's not phoning it in. He actually is giving a shit about this role, and there's quite a few scenes where he has to have a lot of emotion, and I thought he pulled that off very well. And just in general, as Nathan Drake, I have to say I was wrong. I really enjoyed him in this role. Sophia Ali as well as Chloe, I really liked here. I actually forgot completely that Chloe was in the film, because even though I'd seen the trailers, I just completely forgot that she was in them. So when she popped up on screen, I was actually somewhat surprised. But I really enjoyed her back and forth with Nate and Sully in particular. Those two are really cool, and I'd honestly say that the scenes between her and Nate were probably my favourite parts of the film. I really like their dynamic with one another. It is kind of different to obviously what we've seen in the games, but you have to remember that this is obviously taking place much earlier in their lives than when we see them chronologically first interact in the games in Uncharted 2. So I really liked what they did with them here, and again, I think the casting for Chloe was really good. I really enjoyed the actress and how she played the character. And then the other standout performer for me in the film would probably be Antonio Banderas as one of the main villains, Moncada. I thought he was really good. Banderas is just one of them actors where, you know, he just brings an element of charm to all of his roles, and I think he kind of gives the villain role a bit more credibility and a bit more polish in terms of performance standpoint. And I like the fact that his character as well has strong ties to the historical aspect for the MacGuffin of the movie, which I thought was a really cool thing that they did with the villain here, especially with his character. Only extra thing I'll add in for Antonio Banderas is that he's not in the film as much as I thought he was going to be. I don't know whether him contracting COVID during the film's production may have affected that, but yeah, the trailers led me to believe that he maybe would have had a bigger role in the film, but he's not in it as much as I thought he would be, but he's still very good whenever he shows up on screen. I also really like the fact that they actually bothered to include the historical aspect to the MacGuffin in this film. I thought there was something that was going to completely avoid and just kind of not bother with, but it really plays a big part throughout the story, which is nice to see. Again, harkening back to kind of the historical mysteries of the other games, like with Sir Francis Drake and Lawrence of Arabia and Marco Polo. I really like that this film actually carries on that trend of being just a real love letter to just historical like theories about treasure and lost cities. I thought that was really cool that this film carried that over. I think tonally wise, I think the film definitely feels in line with the games for me personally. Like I say, especially with kind of the back and forth between our three main heroes, I thought very much felt like the games, and the dialogue did definitely feel like something that I could imagine the characters from the game saying, but also in terms of what they set up just overall tone-wise with the film and the theme and the action scenes. It definitely came together, and it felt tonally consistent with what we had with the games previously for me personally. The action as well, I think, was pretty good for the most part. I wouldn't say it was absolutely phenomenal, but I was very entertained throughout. I definitely say the hand-to-hand combat was probably like my favorite part of it. Very much how they kind of replicated Nate's fighting style from the games into the film, where you feel like that he's got a hold of things but not exactly always in control, and he takes a beating. It makes him feel vulnerable, which is one of my favorite things of the game. It never feels like he's always got things under control. It does feel like that he could just easily get beaten by someone or accidentally get his arse handed to him, but just make it out at the last moment. It definitely feels very like fun to watch, just watch him get out of these scrambles on these fights in really, really cool ways, and I really like that about the film. The more over-the-top action I also think is pretty good for the most part. It does go crazy at a few points. There's one action sequence in particular where it's just like, it properly like having to suspend your disbelief, but then again, we've done just as crazy stuff in the games. Just the difference is here it's in a film and it's with actors, and it's not in a video game with fake characters. So we've seen it before in the games. I don't really feel like it's something that I can critique this movie for, but let the games fly by with. So yeah, there's some mad shit that happens, but again, I feel like with the tone that they're going for, it doesn't feel too out of place in the movie, and it is very enjoyable nevertheless. I thought the score was pretty good for this film as well. It's composed by the guy who did the score for, I believe, Game of Thrones and Westworld. I can't remember the composer's name, but I really enjoyed his score for the film, and especially kind of the leitmotifs and cues that he takes from the scores of the previous Uncharted games, especially the first three, which is nice to see. And last but not least, I think the Easter eggs and all the references that are littered throughout this entire film are really good. There's multiple of them. I caught many of them on my first viewing, even more on my second viewing. There's one Easter egg in particular which I think everyone will really love. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who doesn't know about it, but it's quite a big one, and when it happened in the film, I was very happy. It made the Uncharted fan inside of me just very warm inside, because it was just such a cool thing to see on screen as a brilliant reference to the game series itself. In terms of the mixed aspects, I have a few things. First one being Mark Wahlberg as Sully. Now, he did grow on me as the film went on, but I think especially at the start of the film, I wasn't impressed by him as Sully. Appearance-wise, he doesn't look like Sully for most of the film, so I think that always kind of puts me at an arm's length with whatever Mark Wahlberg's trying to do. I think him and Tom Holland's dynamic with one another is really good. Sully as a character, like I say, does grow on me as the film progressed. I enjoyed him in the role more. I think he kind of grew into the role. But yeah, to start off with, I wasn't honestly that impressed with him. I feel like maybe if we ever get a sequel, based on how they leave off his character, I think I'll probably end up enjoying him more if we ever get to a second film. But based off what we had in this first film, I'm kind of mixed overall as to how I feel about him and his portrayal of Sully. The CGI at times as well is also very questionable. There's quite a few moments where it's very noticeable, especially in the bigger action set pieces and high concept environments that they're trying to create through CGI. It is quite noticeable. I don't know whether that maybe had something to do with the budget and COVID affecting it, but yeah, there was just a few points where the CGI definitely stuck out a bit too much for me personally. And the other mixed aspect, I would say, is some of the changed elements that are changed from the games to here in the film, mainly to do with the backstory of certain characters that are changed. I can't really discuss it because I want to keep this spoiler free, but yeah, there's just some things that are changed that I didn't mind too much, but there was other things that did quite bug me just because I don't think it needed to be made. I didn't see the point of changing it, and it was just inferior to how it was presented or the backstory that character had in the games. As for the negatives, I do think this film borrows quite heavily from Uncharted 4 and sometimes to its detriment, especially from a story standpoint. It definitely feels like there's quite a few things that are lifted from 4, which I understand. It's a brilliant game. It's my favourite Uncharted game, and I know that obviously Tom Holland, who I know was also an executive producer on the film, said that the 4th game was his favourite and a lot of people's favourites who are making the movie, and you can definitely feel that in terms of like the love for it, but I definitely think at points in the story it definitely copies a little bit too much from 4 at times, to the point where it is unfortunately becomes detrimental, because you kind of sat there at a few points thinking, yeah, this is nice that they're addressing it, but I'd rather just play Uncharted 4. So that unfortunately did work as a detriment to the story. I also think there's quite a lot of exposition in the film, especially when they're trying to set up the main MacGuffin of the movie. There's a lot of exposition, a lot of dialogue heavy scenes, and at some points it does drag on a bit too much. Again, it kind of goes away as you go throughout the film. I think they get better at addressing it in an interesting manner, but I do think for the start of the film there is a bit too much exposition for my liking. And the last one being that there is also a major decision that they make villain-wise halfway through the film, which I just wasn't that impressed by. I just didn't particularly enjoy it. They could have done something different in that regards, just because it detriments one character quite a bit, which is a shame because I was enjoying that character up to that point. But then they make a decision with that character which I just was very, very disappointed in, unfortunately, and it definitely left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth when it happened on screen. So my final verdict for Uncharted, I honestly think this is a good film, which it shocks me that these words are even leaving my mouth, because 4 years ago I would have never imagined this, but I really enjoyed this film. Again, I think Tom Holland really proved me wrong as Nate. I really enjoyed Chloe and Antonio Banderas as one of the main villains in the film. I really liked the whole historical aspect that they kept with the MacGuffin. I thought the action was really fun. I enjoyed the music. There's some really cool references to the franchise and the prior games. There's some things that I'm not too keen on, just some changed elements from the games. Some of the CGI was questionable. There's some story choices that I didn't think were amazing, and the fact that this film isn't like going to completely change everyone's perceptions on video game movies. They're not going to automatically say, oh, this movie is like the thing where it all clicks and like this is like the first truly phenomenal video game film. It's not that, but I definitely think it's a big stepping stone in the right direction. Again, I definitely think it's easily one of the best video game adaptations we've had, which isn't saying a lot because the competition is very few and far between, but I definitely would put it up there with the Sonic the Hedgehog film and Silent Hill as my favourite video game films that have ever come out. And I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, which is honestly quite surprising. Again, I must reiterate, this is not a great film. It's not Oscar worthy. It's not going to be winning any awards, but as someone who came into this genuinely fearful this was just going to be awful, it's going to tarnish my love and the reputation of this franchise, I came away from this incredibly surprised, and to the point where I honestly wouldn't mind if this did get a sequel. I don't know how well it's going to do, because I know here in the UK we've got it a week before the US release, so I don't know if it's going to be successful enough to get a sequel, but if it were, I'd be more than down for it. I would support it, which is words that I never ever thought I would be saying related to an Uncharted movie. And yeah, in the meantime, I'm just going to go away and eat some humble pie, because I was proved wrong, because this film actually was pretty good. So thank you all very much for watching my review for Uncharted. Of course, if you have been lucky enough to be one of the few countries that's got this film as early as I have, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought about it. If you're new to the channel, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss another upload from me. There'll be a strong likelihood that I probably will be doing a spoiler talk for the film, probably with a few friends of mine. If it's not uploaded directly to my channel, I'll definitely leave a link to it somewhere, either on the community section of my YouTube channel or in a link on another future video. But until then, I will catch you next time.